It is impossible to review in this lecture all industrial applications of the irreversible branch of hadronic mechanics and chemistry according to the Lee admissible time evolution, which I reproduce it here because it is the fundamental law. Nevertheless, I believe it is important to outline at least a couple of technology to illustrate the importance of the EPR argument for the development of new technology of clear, direct value for society. Let me recall that in the tutoring number 2, I briefly reviewed the achievement, apparently for the first time, of an attractive force between the identical valence electrons in molecular structure. This allowed us to achieve a quantitative representation of molecules such as that of the gasoline. Following and only following the achievement of a quantitative representation of molecules, then I proposed a basically new chemical species, which is today known as the Santilli magnecules. Recall that atoms in their natural states have a spherical distribution in the sense that the electrons rotate in all possible 3 dimensions in Euclidean space. What I essentially did is that via the use of very powerful electric and magnetic fields, I controlled the orbitals of the peripheral electron from their spherical distribution into a toroidal distribution, by therefore creating a new magnetic field that does not exist in the natural state of atoms. The use of this new magnetic fields was then very easy for its combination with other equally polarized atoms and to form clusters that are called magnecules. I first applied the new chemical species of magnecules to the study of a new technology that had been developed by a US publicly traded company, Aquafuel Corporation. The technology consisted in a special equipment that will gasify ordinary water into a new fuel that I call HHO gas. I repeat, HHO gas. And this was achieved by a special equipment here in which I reproduce one of them is produced in China. It can easily be located in the internet where you can see my word HHO in the front panel. What are the main features of the HHO gas? Well, first, HHO gas requires no atmospheric oxygen for its combustion. Why? Because it consists of the perfect stoichiometric ratio for the combustion of hydrogen and oxygen since they originate from ordinary water. Secondly, the exhaust of HHO gas are given by water vapor, period, nothing more. Third, and most importantly, the HHO gas instantly cuts bricks on either in atmosphere or underwater. I repeat, the HHO gas instantly cuts bricks at contact in either in atmosphere or even underwater. Ladies and gentlemen, those are very unique features indeed that are dramatically beyond any hope of treatment via quantum chemistry. Consequently, it is my opinion that the HHO gas constitutes a concrete verification and application of the EPR argument. In the mid-2000s, 2007, if I remember, my wife Carla and I, we formed a new publicly traded company that we call Gas Corporation. And we brought this company all the way to the highest possible level of trading for a technologically oriented company, which is the NASDAQ trade in Times Square. Gas Corporation was organized for the development of a new gaseous fuel, this time obtained by the gasification of liquid waste, such as engine oil waste, with the possible addition of ordinary water to increase the oxygen and hydrogen content. I am showing this picture, one of what the equipment that we call gas refineries, which are they are built on a trailer, because ammonia gas can be produced anywhere and at any time desired with any need of storing it. I should clarify that both ammonia gas and the HHO gas are not over unit. I repeat, the gases that I study are not over unit. They do not produce energy from nothing. No, they need energy, in this case, electrical energy, to produce over fuel, which is very friendly from an environmental viewpoint. To understand ammonia gas, we have to see its use in the automotive industry. First, I should recall that ammonia gas can be used as an automotive fuel for any car currently in regular production and sale, but for its use via compressed natural gas. So instead of filling up the tank with compressed natural gas, the tank can be filled up with compressed ammonia gas. Here I showed a Ferrari 308, which I converted from its normal use in gasoline to its use with compressed ammonia gas. And while we were doing a systematic test at the Moroso International Racetrack in Florida, in which we showed that our Ferrari on ammonia gas was competitive with respect to conventional 308 running on gasoline, not only on power, but also on RPM and, of course, in the exhaust. Now, the understanding of ammonia gas is illustrated here, which is a view of a commercially available and certified exhaust gas analyzer. Recall that ammonia gas is a publicly traded company, so everything was controlled and is controlled and certified. Now, this exhaust analyzer indicated that the exhaust of ammonia gas contains no appreciable carbon monoxide and no appreciable hydrocarbon. I repeat, the exhaust of ammonia gas in the automotive industry, of course, when used with the proper timing and the proper setting for the stoichiometric ratio with the use of atmospheric oxygen, then they show no appreciable carbon monoxide and no appreciable hydrocarbon, even though the atomic components of ammonia gas are the same as they are in gasoline. By therefore showing a second case of clear societal value of the irreversible component of hadronic mechanics and chemistry according to the EPR argument. So therefore, it is my view that ammonia gas is an additional case of industrial new industry that is a verification and a confirmation of the Einstein view that quantum mechanics is not a complete theory. I shall indicate that ammonia gas corporation, in view of the indicated features, received rather substantial funding, which have been in total well in excess of $20 million funding. At that time, we are talking about the year 2008, 2009, the United States of America were the haven for the development of new technology of direct societal relevance. Why so? Well, because investor could buy stock at a decent normal discount and then selling it by making a normal profit, even in the event that of delay in the organization of a sale that for the case of new product is notoriously difficult. Allow me to indicate very briefly two new technologies that have been developed in physics, always by the use of this admissible, irreversible branch of hadronic mechanics and chemistry, which are also important to illustrate the implication for society of the EPR argument. I left ammonia gas corporation in 2013 because I had completed my work as a chief scientist. Since from that moment on, everything was essentially commercial and therefore outside my field of expertise. In 2013, I formed a new publicly traded company with my wife, Carla, and under the name of Thunder Energy Corporation. Its primary aim was that of achieving full combustion of fossil fuel in their current liquid state. Let me clarify. the preceding Gas Corporation did indeed achieve full combustion, but only thanks to the conversion of fossil fuel from their natural liquid state into a new gaseous state of molecular type. The objective of Thunder Energy Corporation was instead that of achieving full combustion of fossil fuel in their liquid state. The principle of the technology is essentially the following. Note that the carbon monoxide and the hydrocarbon that are released in the exhaust fossil fuel from in all engine, whether from Formula One engine all the way to military jet planes, are combustible. So the question is why they're not burned. The answer is no, they are not burned because the current combustion of fossil fuel is too primitive. Let me be explicit. It is my view that the current combustion of fossil fuel in all available engines, from civilian all the way to military, is essentially the same as it was at the dawn of our civilization 50,000 years ago. Why? Because we essentially strike a spark and lit a fuel. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at the dawn of the third millennium. We physicists, chemists, and we should at least try to improve the combustion of fossil fuel rather than searching alternative or eliminating fossil fuel, which will be completely unrealistic indeed. But, and this was essentially the essence of the Thunder Energy Corporation. Let's try to do better as we have done in 50,000 years. In the two upper figures, I illustrated a new technology that I call hypercombustion. Its principle is essentially the following. Let's consider the molecule composed by carbon-12 and oxygen-16. It is evident that this molecule will indeed burn like an ordinary fuel. However, notice that the nuclei in this configuration are very close to each other. So therefore, it is possible then to bring the nuclei to contact with each other with consequential activation of the nuclear force and then inevitable fusion of carbon-12 and oxygen-16 into silicon-28 with the impossibility of producing neutron or other harmful radiation, because other carbon and oxygen synthesize the silica. In this case, it is evident that there is no neutron can be produced, or it cannot. In this case, there is no energy, not even minimally available to produce neutronic and other harmful radiation. So the principle of hypercombustion was that of activating nuclear fusion of carbon and oxygen into silicon, at least in very small percentage, something of the order of parts per million or even parts per billion. In other words, the principle of the technology was not that of replacing fossil fuel with this new hypercombustion. No, was the use of very small radiation-free nuclear fusion to do what? To increase the temperature to such a level that the carbon monoxide and other carbon will combust. And indeed, that's essentially what happened, as we established experimentally in a number of measurements by qualified laboratories with results signed by the laboratory director. It is precisely one of the peak of silicon over the background, which is over 10 times the background, thus established the existence beyond credible doubt. This new technology will be reviewed jointly with others that I cannot touch here by Indrani Das Sarma at our teleconference. I would like to take this opportunity to thank her for her participation and interest in our studies. In the two views below, I outline a second technology, equally inconceivable with quantum mechanics like the preceding one, and therefore consisting of a clear verification and application of the EPR argument, of course, in my view. The technology is based on the reproduction in laboratory of the fusion of the neutron from the hydrogen as occurring in the core of a star. This laboratory synthesis is achieved via this equipment depicted here, which is called a directional neutron source, and which is capable of synthesizing neutron from an hydrogen gas, filling up the equipment with the desired direction, energy, generally very low energy, and flux. This technology was developed because, in my view, is of particular significance for our national security, because it is the only equipment I know that can detect nuclear weapons that can be concealed in baggages, whether suitcases at New York airport or containers at Los Angeles port. Reason why? Because fissionable materials are metal, so under conventional scan, which are X-ray scan, they appear like a piece of steel. And only low energy, specially designed neutron flux, can detect fissionable material, because they trigger a shower of radiation caused by the disintegration of a few nuclei, with consequential very clear identification. Indeed, this picture shows us the directional neutron source is aims the flow of neutron toward a suitcase with a bunch of detectors in the back to detect the shower of radiation caused. Of course, this was a simulation because we are not in a position to test fissionable nuclear material. In addition to this application for national security, for which we developed, my wife and I developed, founded the company and developed the technology. The reason why I'm mentioning it here is because the same equipment can be filled up with a deuterium gas rather than conventional hydrogen gas. And in the second case, namely when filled up with deuterium, all evidence available to the best of my knowledge indicates the apparent synthesis of a negatively charged deuteron, depicted here on the right-hand side, which is produced within a plasma of natural deuterium, which are positively charged. By therefore not only eliminating the historical Coulomb barrier, but actually converting the Coulomb barrier into a Coulomb attraction, with consequential natural contact of this negatively charged deuteron with natural deuteron, and ensuing fusion into the helium, also in view that all couplings are the correct ones. This new technology will be presented at our teleconference by Simone Beghella Bartoli from Italy. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank Simone for its dedication to our teleconference. Even to he worked during a summer period, which, as everybody knows, is rather sacred in Italy for vacation. Thunder Energy Corporation is still in full activity, as everybody can see, with the symbol TNRG, Thomas, Nancy, Roger, George. However, I should indicate that the old technology regrettably had to be moved from a publicly traded conduit into a private company called Hadronic Technologies Corporation. This transition was very unfortunately necessary because of the impossibility in reality of funding nowadays new technology in startup private companies in view of a truly incredible restriction imposed by the Security and Exchange Commission. In fact, it is difficult nowadays for an investor to get his normal and decent profit following investing in stock of a startup, publicly traded company, because of excessive restriction from the Security and the Exchange Commission. As an example, suppose that an investor participates in the management of the company, something that I already recommended to investors so they can follow up. Besides, they have knowledge in business much better than the corresponding knowledge by scientists in that field. Well, if that is the case, namely if an investor participates in the management, then they are restricted by the SEC. They can only sell 1% of the total outstanding number of shares per 3 months. This condition alone essentially renders very difficult for investors to get their money back, forget the profit. So I have to say it with extreme sadness that nowadays in the United States of America, the country that I really love, the funding of new technology via startup corporation is no longer possible, with very unreassuring consequences for the future, not only of all of us Americans, but also for mankind. Let me briefly outline the rather intriguing and important implications and expected applications in biology of the irreversible branch of hadronic mechanics and chemistry. As we all know, our lives all over this planet have been now significantly restricted by the pandemic due to the coronavirus. So for us scientists, the pertinent issue is, what is a virus? Well, ladies and gentlemen, to be scientists, we have to tell the truth, that our knowledge of the structure, the very, very essence of a virus at this moment is essentially insignificant. In orthodox chemistry, there is not even an attractive force between the valence electrons that are supposed to bond together the various molecules. Quantum mechanics and therefore chemistry will reduce a virus to a collection of finite points, which is something, ladies and gentlemen, with all due apologies, allow me to say that is for me repulsive, because the complexity of life cannot be reduced to a collection of points on any ground of credibility or science. With the understanding that our knowledge of biological structure at this moment is indeed essentially a tabula rasa, let me briefly indicate the implications of the EPR argument. Well, they are illustrated in this figure, which is the very, very primary figure for the verification of the EPR argument. Namely, it depicts a constituents as extended and in continuous total overlapping, entanglement, and communications with another object or other structure. This principle essentially implies a new conception of a living organism such as a cell, which results to be composed by extended constituents in condition of total, continuous mutual penetration and entanglement, and therefore continuous communications. So the pertinent question that we asked ourselves 30 years ago was, can a single valued theory or method produce significant results for a structure such as a cell that can be composed of 10 to the 20 constituents in continuous communications? I am here referring to theory such as quantum mechanics, as well as isomechanics and hypermechanics as presented until now, in which the product of two objects produces one single result. It is clear that due to the complexity of the structure, the sheer number of continuous simultaneous communication will require a multi-valued formulation, namely a formulation for which the product of two entities, such as two numbers, produce not one result, but a large number of ordered results, which can be up to 10 to the 20 entities. Among all multi-valued theories, it is evident to me that the most important one and the most promising in any case is provided by the hyperstructure developed by the mathematician Thomas Vogelklees. I want to thank again and with appreciation for his invaluable contribution to science as well as to our teleconference. The need for hyperstructure, particularly of the Vogelklees type, I'm here referring in particular to Vogelklees hyperstructure, multi-valued reformulation or representation of the Lie admissible time evolution, beginning with its irreversibility as necessary for any credible representation of living organisms, which hyperstructural methods are formulated by Vogelklees on hyperspaces over hyperfields as necessary to achieve confrontation of any theory with physical reality. The importance of Vogelklees hyperstructural formulation can be illustrated with a central feature of the DNA, such as this one here. As we all know, in a DNA, the correlation of two or more atoms eventually produce a complete organ, such as an eye. But the correlation in biology is mathematically represented by the multiplication. So this is clear visual formulation of Vogelklees hyperstructure, because in this case, the correlation, namely the multiplication of two or more atoms, produce an extremely large number, 10 to the 30, 10 to the 40 results, of course, in a controlled and orderly fashion. In conclusion, I do believe that Vogelklees hyperstructural formulation of the Lie admissible branch of hadronic mechanics and chemistry can indeed initiate a basically new chapter of biology, which capability and advances that can only be stated at this moment of being beyond our imagination. In closing, let me at least show a selected number of papers in the Lie admissible branch of hadronic mechanics and chemistry, which have been accumulated in 50 years, which, as you can see, with a great regret of the inability to enter into specific identification of the contribution by each and every paper. This is a list of monographs in the field. In particular, I have to recall Jean Fronteau's and Thélèse Arenas from France, Jeremy Dunning-Davis from England, and Anil Balekar from India for truly fundamental and first, in my opinion, first in history, contribution for a direct connection between an irreversible, Lie admissible mechanics and thermodynamics, of course, through the intermediary step of a non-unitary statistical mechanics, for instance, of the type by the late Nobel laureate Ilya Prigogine, who honored me with this friendship. Thank you for your attention.